Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're enjoying what you're reading. If you're not, remember, set it aside, pick up something else. Um, Today's book, the book I'm going to review for this video is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This is the first book in a trilogy called the Winter Night trilogy. It primarily takes place in the 1400s in Russia, then called the Rus, R-U-S, with apostrophe after the S. I will I'll read the back as I usually do, and then I'll give you my rating and my thoughts. Here we go. Winter lasts most of the year at the edge of the Russian wilderness, and in the long night, Vasilisa and her siblings love to gather by the fire to listen to their nurse's fairy tales. Above all, Vasya loves the story of Frost, the blue-eyed winter demon. Wise Russians fear him, for he claims unwary souls, and they honor the spirits that protect their homes from evil. Then Vasya's widowed father brings home a new wife from Moscow. Fiercely devout, Vasya's stepmother forbids her family from honoring their household spirits. But Vasa fears what this may bring, and indeed misfortune begins to stalk the village. Ooh. But Vasa's stepmother only grows harsher, determined to remake the village to her liking and to groom her rebellious stepdaughter for marriage or a convent. As the village's defenses weaken and evil from the forest creeps nearer, Vasilisa must call upon dangerous gifts she has concealed to protect her family from a threat sprung to life from her nurse's most frightening tales. I gave this a 4 out of 5. There were a couple reasons why I did. First reason was that I had to restart the book. I had gotten about a few chapters in and I totally had forgotten, and I kind of felt like I had lost my place in the book. Even after 4 chapters, it's very weird. But fortunately it was short enough. It was very much within, it was a fairly short reread. It was, maybe I have to double check. It was within 50 pages. So it was doable. Secondly, there is a lot of world building in the book because it is a trilogy, so it is slow. For the first 2 parts, you're like, what's going on here? What's going on? But then you get to it does. By the 3rd part, it is worth it. By the 3rd part, by the time you get to the 3rd part, it is worth your time and persistence in getting this book read, because the payoff is really good for this book. I mean, other than having to restart it and that it was slow, I really quite like this book. And I think why I liked it was because it was different. It's in a genre called historical fantasy. And I may say I'm not a big fantasy reader, but I've read at least 2 fantasy books this year. Lord of the Rings and A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I imagine I've read some other fantasy books. And throughout the year, it's just, I guess I read more fantasy than I seem to think I read over the course of a year. I think in reading you kind of have to sort of reading fiction, I think you sometimes have to and I know the word, but I can't say it, and this is really frustrating for me. You have to suspend disbelief that, you know, things were really the way they were. I also liked the fact that her nurse, Vasya's nurse, plays an important role for most of the book, for at least up until the end of the second part. Her name is Dunya. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's how I pronounced it. And I like that it goes into a world that isn't really, there isn't much, there isn't much documentation about. And I think that's really interesting to go into this medieval world, you know, because this is the 1400s in Russia, they call it, you know, and they talked about things like the boyars that you hear about, and who are noblemen basically. And he talked about the Muscovy system and things I've heard about in other historical elements, which are especially important in Russia up until, I think, Ivan the Great or Ivan the Terrible. I'm not sure which one. But yeah, definitely you can tell the influence of I think, and she also, I like the fact that she gives quite a bit of a good interview about her background and the background of the Rus. Like, you gotta remember, up until the 15th century, there was no defined, from the 13th through the 15th century, so when this book takes place, there was no unified polity called Russia. Instead, the Rus lived under a desperate collection of rival princes who owned their ultimate allegiance to the Mongol overlords. The word Russia does not come into common use until the 17th century, so we're talking almost Catherine the Great. Thus, in the medieval context, which this book takes place in, one would not refer to Russia, but rather the land of the Rus, or simply Rus. And she gives you Rus. The Ruses were originally a Scandinavian people in the 9th century CE at the invitation of warring Slavic and Finnic tribes. They established a ruling dynasty, the Rurykids, that eventually comprised a large swath of what now is Ukraine, Belarus, and Western Russia. The territory they ruled was eventually named after them, as were the people living under their dynasty. The name Rus has lasted into the present day, as we can see in the names of Russia and Belarus. So it's a really great, I think, introduction, not only to, I'd say, Russian folklore, but also to Russian history. So I really, really liked it. But I wasn't enamored. Let's just say it wasn't my favorite. Fives are, whenever you see me give a 5, it's either it's a favorite of mine. So like Harry Potter books will get a 5. Or I really think it's absolutely outstanding. Like, I was just absolutely floored with the book. So I think I gave a 5 to Secret Keeper, which I reviewed previously, and the video's up on my site. So yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend this. If you're into Russia and Russian history and Russian folklore, I would highly recommend it. She is a specialist in Russia. I think she talks about she specialized in, when she was in college, she specialized in French and Russian literature. So in order to specialize in Russian literature, you got to know the folklore, right? So she obviously read all the greats, like Pushkin and then that sort of thing. But she also, before she started university, she lived and studied in Moscow for a year. So she got a sense of the place. But yeah, I've put a hold on the second book, which is The Girl in the Tower. I don't know what that one's about. I have a feeling it's about Olga, because it gives you an excerpt, it gives you a chapter, prologue in the first chapter of The Girl in the Tower. And that's about it. And it primarily centers around Vasya's older sister, Olga. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope to get it fairly soon. Like I said at the start of the video, this is a fairly popular series, apparently. I checked holds for this book in particular. There's one copy and quite a few holds. It's like 10. So obviously it's popular. I don't know why my library doesn't have more of this book. This is a book club book, copy. So it was easy to get. But apparently this was one the person who's heading this up, she really wanted to do this. And I'm glad she did, because I looked at the holds and I'm thinking I would kind of be dissuaded by that. By the hold list. And the fact there's only one copy in the entire system. Anyways, that was The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I hope you enjoy. And if you've read the book, please give me your comments and your thoughts about the book. I don't think many have. But if you're interested in Russia, I would highly recommend reading this, and especially Russian folklore. I will be recommending this to a friend of mine who is big into Russia, loves Russia's stuff surrounding Russia. Like I recommended Maya Natasha, which I recently reviewed on here, and she is reading it, and I recommended it to some other people, and they absolutely are loving it as well. So yeah. Anyways, that was The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden, and I look forward to talking to you soon, and happy creating. Bye for now.